Alrighty, what's going on, everybody? I'm back with another podcast. It's been a little bit. I've taken a little break, but now we're back. We're going to start cranking these things out again. And what a better guest to have than Mr. Jeff Kurtz on the podcast to start things up again. So I'll let him talk a little bit about himself, his background, and then we'll get things rolling.
Thank you, Sam. Yep, as Sam let everyone know, my name's Jeff Kurtz. I've been state representative since 2018. I was born here in Fort Madison. I've got two brothers, one that taught here at Holy Trinity for not quite 40 years. I think, well, maybe closer to 35 years. My older brother lives in Florida. My occupation for a little over 40 years was locomotive engineer, first with the Santa Fe Railroad. Then we merged with the Burlington Northern in 1996, and I finished out my career in 2014 with the Burlington Northern. And that time I was a union officer most of the time. And I finished out my career as the chairman of our Iowa State Legislative Board for the Brotherhood of Locomotive Engineers and Trainmen. I held that position from 2004 to 2014, and I was also president of our local for 8 years too. I was retired for 3 years when I was approached about running for office, and I had to think long and hard about that because retirement's a pretty good gig, as anybody will tell you. But I thought about it for 2 weeks. In fact, my wife and I were on vacation, and being the stalwart, courageous person that I was, I didn't tell her while we were on vacation what I was thinking of and what people had approached me about running for office. And as we were sitting in an airport in San Francisco, I looked at her and said, "Honey," I said, what would you think if I ran for Jerry Kearns' vacated seat as state representative?" And she looked at me and she says, "If you don't bother me, I don't care what you do." So with that ringing endorsement, I ran. I won my primary. I won the general election. And I plan on running again. I enjoy the job.
Awesome. So maybe talk a little bit about your start into politics. Did it start with you having to join a union, or is that how you really got into things? Or
yeah, I think it did. We looked at a lot of the problems that we had as locomotive engineers, and they boiled down to politics. We are governed as far as safety with the Federal Railroad Administration, and the Federal Railroad Administration, the FRA, is tasked with the smooth running of the railroads and safety. And that's, I kind of think that would be akin to the Chamber of Commerce being the head of worker safety in the civilian world. You know, you should be able to separate those two. Yeah. As far as I'm concerned. We don't do that, and so we get some, well, we got some questionable rulings against us, and it boiled down to politics. And I could see that fairly early on, that it depended on the administration. You know, if we had a Democratic administration, it wasn't great, but it was better. You would have more luck with the FRA as far as safety concerns. In a Republican administration, we pretty well got hammered.
Yeah.
And so I took over our state legislative board in 2004, and then I really was immersed in politics because that's what you do with the boards. So and one of the things, because of the Railway Labor Act, the rail labor unions have never interacted with other unions all that much, because we're kind of a different breed of cat. Just, you know, in 1923, the Railway Labor Act was passed. In 1926, it was adjusted again. And there's some good things in there, but there's some bad things in there too. So I tried to bring our legislative board into the family of labor. I know we've had 3 chairmen since then on the BLET side. They've done a really good job of doing that. In fact, my predecessor did a good job of that too. So I think that I think that's the future of labor, is coming together.
Yeah.
And they have to do it in. People don't like to hear this, but they have to do it in the political arena, because if we don't have legislation that can help us, and we've seen that in Iowa, with right to work, some of the bills that I've seen come through since I've been in office, we just do not value workers in this state.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, real quick, I want to plug the last podcast that I did. I did it with Wes and I'm blanking on the other guy's name. But basically, they're in a fight like over a bill. You guys can go check that out. Has all to do with the railroad and all kinds of stuff like that. But kind of moving on a little bit, you have an announcement that you wanted to make on here, so I'll let you make that announcement, and then we'll keep going.
Okay, thank you. I was thinking about Wes and Jordan, who you had on there.
Yeah, Jordan, yeah.
Yeah, but Sam, I do have an announcement, and you're going to be the first to break this.
Awesome. About
2 weeks ago, I was contacted by the clergy in Fort Madison, and they wanted to do a panel on race. And so we had our initial meeting was, let me see, I think a week ago last Tuesday, and then 2 weeks ago last Tuesday, and then we met again yesterday. And anyway, the panel that we're going to have is entitled "Come, Let Us Reason Together: An Open Forum About Race in America." Right now, 2 of our scheduled panelists are 2 very good friends of mine from the legislature, Akeo Abdul Samad from Polk County, and Phyllis Thiede from Scott County. And what this really is going to be is a conversation about race. I think one of the things that I learned as a railroader, because I worked in and out of the Chicago area my whole career, is that people of color, when you get to know them, are just like you. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. They have their good points, they have their bad points, but they're human beings just like you, and they worry about how they're going to pay their bills, and how if their water heater is going to break, how they're going to provide for their families. And to treat people differently because they look different than you, or they might act a bit differently than you, is really wrong. So we're going to have that conversation. Akeo is just a wonderful guy. He runs a nonprofit in Des Moines called Creative Visions. He feeds the homeless. He does a lot of things with that nonprofit. And Akeo happens to be Muslim too. And I think people need to get to know people that are different than them and see exactly, that they may look different, they may have different beliefs, but when it comes right down to it, they're human beings just like the rest of us. Phyllis Thiede, Phyllis is a buddy of mine. We're working on several things together. She is out of, like I said, the Quad Cities, and Phyllis is going to give us a female perspective on race. I thought that we needed to balance that out. So those 2 are confirmed for sure. I think we're going to have other panelists too, but it's going to be August the 8th from 1 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And August the 8th is a Saturday, and it's going to be at the multi-purpose room at the Fort Madison High School.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's something that needs to happen. I think especially around our area, you know, bringing some people in, like you said, you need to understand that people are different. They have different beliefs. They look different, whatever. But when it boils down to it, they're worried about the same problem. They have the same problems. They're worried about the same things that you are. So seeing people and actually interacting with other people is extremely important. So I want to thank you for putting that together.
Well, and thank the clergy. And I hope that people come out to experience this. We're going to have the social distancing. It looks like we're going to require masks and everything. So we think with the room that we have at in the multi-purpose room, we'll be able to sufficiently social distance. And we wanted to make sure that the place was big enough that we wouldn't have to turn anybody away. So
yeah, awesome. So let's dive into some policy positions here. I wanted to first touch on climate change. And you always hear about climate change on a federal level or even on an international level. So a lot of people know about that kind of stuff, and we could talk about that at a different time. I want to focus on the state level. What Iowans can do, maybe not on a personal level, but what like the state of Iowa could do to the extent that they could do much of anything. In your opinion, what can Iowa do about climate change?
I want to tell people that you may not think you can do much. I think you'd be surprised. I really do. I mean, I'm just one person. I never thought that I'd get into half the things that I've been into. So don't be afraid to dive in. You can really make a difference. On the Iowa side, I've been working with a group on a national level called Solutionary Rail. And it affects Iowa, and in fact, it affects this region because what we want to do is electrify the rail system and run. We think that we can decarbonize the whole transportation system, which is about 30% of the greenhouse gases. When people talk about a Green New Deal, it's this airy fairy thing that it's pie in the sky. We need to have specific solutions. Solutionary rail is one of them. We want to use renewable energy to power trains, freight and passenger, and to go along with what Jordan and Wes were talking about. We want to include labor rights in this, Native American rights. If you go to the Solutionary Rail website, it's solutionaryrail.org. You can find out about it. My good friend Bill Moyer, whom I've known since 2013, I've worked with him on this. This is something that's very doable, and it's something that actually pays for itself. One of the things that I ran across as I was doing my 10 years with the Iowa State Board is I found some literature that says that, and this is from the Texas Transportation Institute, which is at that great liberal institution, Texas A&M, which I say that rather facetiously, but this is a pretty conservative estimate. They estimate that we spend $166 billion every year on traffic congestion. Bill and I have worked on this problem with Solutionary Rail. We think if we move truck traffic and a lot of auto traffic to the rails, we can eliminate a large portion of this and actually pay for this system. So when people talk about a Green New Deal, actually we can do things to make it pay for itself.
Yeah.
And besides that, if we don't do anything, a guy like me, I may not see the worst parts of climate change. You definitely will. Yeah. And I think that, of course, in our recent problems with the pandemic, we've lost sight of this, and we need to get back into what we can do as far as mitigating the effects of climate change.
Yeah. The analogy that always pops into my mind is humans are kind of like the frog in boiling water, where that, you know, they're sitting there, a frog sitting in a pot of boiling water, and for the longest time the frog doesn't know the water is going to start boiling, but as soon as it does, you know, it's too late. And that's kind of what humans are. We want immediate gratification. If we're not seeing the effects right now, which we are starting to see them with Siberia or whatever it was being 100 degrees the other day, we are starting to see them, but not to the extent to where people will do something about it. So yeah, I mean, immediate action is definitely necessary.
And I've also started working on a mass transit issue with the city councilor from Pleasant Hill. We think we can do something as far as bringing mass transit to Des Moines, and actually we could, you know, help the minority communities in Des Moines with this by offering transportation out of these communities where they could travel for better jobs, or they can actually work on these systems and make a good living. So yeah, that's one of the things that we can do here in Iowa. Another thing is I've been working ever since I came into office. I've been working with short line railroads, which are, you know, a lot different. There's a big difference between the class ones like the UP and the BNSF as opposed to the short lines. You know, it's the speed of the track, what they actually do and things like that. But one of the things that we've noticed, and I'm bringing that research in, is that where these short lines pop up and where they're healthy, manufacturing pops up along them. So we can actually create jobs, and we can do something about the problem of rural depopulation, which is really, that is a real problem in Iowa and in Southeast Iowa.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on a little bit past climate change, I mean, we could talk about that all day. Literally, we could talk about that all day.
Yeah. Maybe we will sometime.
Maybe. In a perfect world, right? Jeff Kurtz is you're the dictator of Iowa. You're the CLPL of Iowa. What are 3 bills that you're passing tomorrow that come to your head?
Is that dictator for a day? Because I can think of a lot of people I'd like to fire too, as far as passing some legislation. But I think one of the things that I would definitely do is reinstate Chapter 20. And for the viewers that don't know what Chapter 20 is, I believe it was 1974 that it was brought in by a Republican administration, Robert Ray's administration, and it outlined what public unions could bargain for. Well, this worked well for over 40 years, and then in 2017, the legislature decided in their wisdom that they said that they were just going to tinker with it a little bit. Well, what they ended up doing was stripping all the union provisions out of it. Our bargaining, people can't even, our correction officers can't even bargain for their own safety. That's how bad this thing is.
Yeah.
So that would be the first thing. I would reinstate Chapter 20. In fact, I'd probably expand it. I think what I would also do is pass tax credits for the short line railroads, like I was just talking about, and try to do something about rail traffic in the state. One of the things about our present system, the people I don't think realize roads are incredibly expensive to build, and they're incredibly expensive to maintain, and especially in relation to railroads. So I would probably, in fact, I have worked on tax credits for some of the short lines, so that would be done. And the third thing would be to actually fund our schools. For the last 10 years, I think we've averaged like 1.8% a year. We're not even keeping up with inflation or the growth of our population, which is pretty minuscule. I mean, we're not growing, but we're not keeping up with inflation either. And this is adding to rural depopulation. So I think that would be the three things that I do, Sam.
Yeah, awesome. We've touched on a lot about unions, and this just popped in my head. Maybe for somebody who isn't as educated or maybe doesn't know, talk a little bit about, and this could go, you could go all day about this too. Talk about the importance of unions.
Okay, and this is a great place to talk about it, since we have something called Right to Work here in Iowa. And so what Right to Work says is that if you bring a union into a place, the people that are in that company don't necessarily have to join that union, but they get all the benefits of somebody that does pay dues. So, it basically what it does is starve the union, starve their treasury. One of the things that we see here in Iowa is that workers average quite a bit less in this state than they do in our surrounding states, as far as salary. And it used to be like 34,000. I'm not sure if that's an accurate, if that's accurate anymore, but it was about 34,000 for each worker is what we averaged. In a place like Minnesota, I think it was 42. So what we've done is we've put a tax on these workers already. And we've given that to corporations and big companies and said, here, these people aren't going to make this kind of money, and we're going to let you come into this state and take advantage of these people. Plus all the other silly things that we do as far as what we've done with workforce development, what we've done with Chapter 20. And so people, when you have a union, people aren't taken advantage of like this. Where unions are strong, say in Minnesota, Illinois, other places, Missouri, surprisingly enough, even being a Republican state, the unions are fairly strong down there. And what that means is you have something called supply and demand. Those people that make more money can spend more money, and they will spend more money. And they'll spend it on things like housing, buying cars, things like that. So in the last 40 years, we've bought into this supply side economics, which since we've done that, workers' salaries have basically gone nowhere. And the top 1% have just made out fantastically because of our unproven economic theory that we're all going to be better off, which we're not.
Yeah. So
unions are a good way to counter this. We can actually point to statistics and say, hey, this is not working. And to that end, we've got the University of Iowa Labor Center that we work with, wonderful people there. The Iowa Policy Project, which gives me a lot of statistics that I can work with, and with other unions. And I think that we make the state healthier in a lot of different ways when we give workers rights.
Yeah, 100%. This is something that I've coined, and I'm going to trademark this term at some point in my life. It's called trickle up economics rather than trickle down economics. So it turns out when instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires and investing in a large multinational corporations, if you invest into the people, they'll go out and spend their money instead of just putting it into the Cayman Islands somewhere. So when you have trickle up economics, that's good for the entire economy rather than just the 1%. But I digress from that. Let's switch it up a little bit. Let's talk about inspirations that you have. Maybe we'll do a life inspiration for you, and then also a political inspiration. Could be a person, a thing, whatever.
I think I think the life and the political kind of intersect with me,
Okay.
and it came late in life when I got involved with the Labor Center at the University of Iowa. I learned so much from them, and the people there. Jen Scherer, that is the director, a wonderful person. Robin Clark Bennett, Paul Iverson. I've worked with them. They are just top-notch teachers. I used to do safety classes there, and they taught me a lot about worker power, all three of them, and what we can do on the political side as well as what we can do on the union side. You know, we can attack this in a couple of different ways, and they are just experts at getting data that we can use. I think another one of my inspirations was a woman by the name of Nancy Lesson. She is probably one of the best labor educators in the world. She worked for the Mazzocchi Center out of Pittsburgh. And Nancy just recently retired. We met in 2011, and we've been friends since. And she is, in fact, I called her one time about an issue that I had. And she said, right now, she says, you wouldn't believe it. She says, I'm on a subway, she said, in London, and I'm going to talk to train drivers about safety. And I said, Nancy, feel free to bandy my name about whenever you want. And she says, believe me, Jeff, I do. But Nancy, she was another one that blended the political with worker action. That was tremendously inspiring. I'm trying, another, I think another inspiration for me has been our Black Caucus in the Iowa House, seeing how they operate. I mean, they're just so good. What they did here right before the session ended in June, by getting the police reform bill passed all in one day. They got it through subcommittee, committee, got it through the House, got it through the Senate, and had it signed by the governor the next day, which that was just a miracle. I mean, that was just so inspirational to me. Yeah. And two of the main drivers of that are two of the people that we have coming to Fort Madison in August.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure you could go on all day about, inspirations. There's so many people out there and that do great things, like you just said. But let's talk a little bit about closing out. When is election day for you? When can people get out and vote for you to put you back in office?
Right now, July the 6th, which was 2 days ago, you could apply for our absentee ballots. So you can get an absentee ballot request. I would suggest everyone do that. We're the second Tuesday in November, and I don't have a calendar in front of me, but we'll be the second Tuesday in November. In fact, my first election, I was elected on my 64th birthday. And I told people that I got to be something I always wanted to be, as a 64-year-old freshman.
Awesome. Yeah.
But yeah, the election will be the first Tuesday in November, but you can get you can request an absentee ballot, and I think it comes 29 days before the election. So okay. Please do that right now and vote by mail. It's the easiest way to vote.
Awesome. Yeah. Do you have any last minute thoughts, ideas, anything like that? Comments?
I would like to talk about, and I read this because I've had to deal with this, but the Paycheck Protection Program, I worked with a lot of people over our break, our interruption on getting their unemployment. I worked with some small businesses on Paycheck Protection. That's a federal program, but I could work with Dave Loebsack's office. But I came across something that talked about some of the people that got the PPP, and some of these places were really eye-opening. We had some of the Kushner hotels that got this. I mean, this was supposed to be for small businesses. Some of the Kushner hotels that got this. We had lobbyists for Donald Trump that got this. We had, well, and two of them that really stood out to me was Grover Norquist. If you're an older guy like me, you remember Grover Norquist, his famous quote about shrinking government down to a size where he could drown it in a bathtub. He took PPP money, but the one that really got me was the Ayn Rand Institute took money from the government. So this a lot of what we've done. People talk about the $1,200 that everybody got, and they also talk about the some of the small businesses that were funded and how much money we spent on that. We haven't spent near as much money on the average American as we have with people like this, like the 1%. Right now, our Treasury is buying corporate and junk bonds as we speak. Yep. And so, anybody that talks about capitalism, they need to talk about this too.
Yeah.
This is not capitalism like you and I would think of it. So.
Yeah, 100%. And like you said, it's really hypocritical because people, like, I can't remember what the dude's name was that you just mentioned, but he hates government, but then when government wants to, bail him out, he has no problem with it. So it's almost like he just has a problem with the people being bailed out rather than him or corporations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I read something like that where Trump's family also got some multi-million-dollar bailout. So, if that's not corruption, then I don't know what is.
And being in government, I got none of that. So, and I'm sure your Zoomcast hasn't gotten any of that either.
I'm a small business. Where the heck's my freaking money?
I'll look into that for you, Sam. but don't hold your
breath. Anything else that you want to touch on, Jeff? I know we can do this again several more times over again.
I would love to do it again sometime, Sam, but I would ask people to go. Can I plug my website?
Absolutely. I'll put before you do, I'll just look in the description below. I'll put a link to his website, but go ahead and say it as well.
KurtzforIowa.com. There's a place to give money. What I'm asking people to do is give me $5, give me $2. I don't care. I will not take money from people that I cannot support. I would like people like you, like me, to save their money to take care of their families during this time, because I have the feeling things are going to get a lot worse. So yeah. I want you, I don't want people to throw money at a guy like me, but give me $5. And I think that would, I've got an Act Blue button on there. You can do it through Act Blue. You can help with my campaign. If you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me at 515-585-0408. And we will always take help with the campaign. So.
Yeah, awesome. And my request to anybody watching is talk to people about Mr. Kurtz here too. He's an awesome guy. He's the life of a party. If he's there, I mean, you can.
Sam, you don't have to call me Mr. Kurtz or Representative Kurtz. Your Excellency will do. So.
Thank you. The audience, just talk about Kurtz, and then reach out to him. He's an awesome guy. Don't be afraid to talk to him. Give him a call. He just left his number. I'll leave his email in the description. If you have any questions about his policy stances, you just want to talk to him a little bit about his experiences. Maybe you're thinking about running. I'm sure he'll open up about that kind of stuff. So don't be afraid to reach out.
one more thing, Sam. I've had a lot of people come to me with questions on their unemployment. If you have problems with that, use that phone number, call me. I've had some luck getting people's unemployment started. I saw a figure of maybe a third of the people having problems getting their unemployment. In a time like this, you need that money. Please, if you're having problems, give me a call.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for coming on. It was a blast, and I'm sure that we'll do it again.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.